Lyra sat alone in her small quarters on the edge of Andromeda Outpost, the faint hum of the space station surrounding her. The walls were bare, except for a few tools she had once used for healing. She stared at them, feeling the weight of her failure pressing on her chest. Once she had been a healer of great renown. Ships from across the galaxy sought her for her rare ability to touch not only the body, but the soul. But that was before. Before the mission that went wrong. Before the lives she could not save. Since then, Lyra had avoided people, avoiding risks, avoiding her own past. She spent her days repairing minor injuries for travelers, bruises, scratches, and broken bones. Nothing dangerous, nothing that required her to confront herself. She told herself it was safer this way, safer for everyone. That quiet routine ended the moment the intercom chimed. Incoming ship, the station's control voice announced. Lyra frowned. Ships arrived all the time, but something about the tone made her uneasy. She peeked through the observation window and saw a vessel unlike any she had seen before, sleek, black, and marked with a sigil she recognized immediately. It was the mark of the Aurex clan, one of the oldest and most powerful interstellar families. Her stomach tightened. The Aurex were known for strength, leadership, and honor, but also for their expectations. If they came to her, it would not be for a simple scratch or bruise. The docking clamp hissed as the ship secured itself. Moments later, a team of armored figures entered her station. She recognized him immediately. Kale, the alpha of the Aurex clan, tall, broad, and imposing. His armor was scorched in places, his energy aura flickering weakly. He was alive, but barely. Lyra's heart raced. She wanted to step back, to hide, to let someone else handle this. But she couldn't. He needed her. And despite everything, she still was a healer. Lyra, one of the crewmen said, urgency in his voice. He's hurt badly. We need you. Kyle didn't speak. His eyes were closed and his breath came in shallow, uneven gasps. Lyra approached cautiously, feeling the raw energy emanating from him. It was fractured like a broken crystal. She had never felt anything like this. His soul itself seemed wounded, screaming silently. Lyra swallowed her fear. I can help, she said softly, almost to herself. The crewman nodded, stepping back. Whatever you do, save him. Lyra knelt beside Kale. She placed her hands gently on his chest, letting her energy connect with his. The moment their energies touched, a shock ran through her. His grief, his loss, and the weight of being the only survivor of his clan washed over her in a wave. It was intense, almost too much to bear. She gritted her teeth, steadying herself. You're stronger than you think, she whispered, more to herself than to him. I can do this. I have to do this. For hours she worked. Her hands glowed faintly, a soft light pulsing as she guided energy into him. Kale twitched occasionally, his body responding to the healing. But it was not just physical healing he needed. His mind and soul were fractured, and Lyra knew that touching those parts carried a risk. If she pushed too hard, she could be injured, or worse, lose herself in his pain. A sudden movement made her pause. Kale's eyes opened slightly, revealing amber-colored irises that seemed to flicker like dying fire. He looked at her, and for a brief moment it was as if he saw not just her hands, but her very soul. Why are you still trying? He asked, his voice hoarse. You're broken. You failed before. You can't fix me. Lyra froze. His words hit her harder than any energy shock ever could. She had failed before. She had tried and failed. The memory came back vividly. The mission where she lost control, where lives were taken and where she had blamed herself for everything. I failed, she admitted, her voice shaking. I know what you mean. But even broken things can be healed. Even broken people, even souls. Kale's eyes narrowed. He didn't speak, but the tension in the room was electric. Lyra could feel his resistance, his fear, and his sorrow all at once. But she could also feel a thread, fragile yet persistent, that connected them. Something inside him wanted to fight, wanted to live. She held onto that thread with everything she had. Hours passed. Lyra never stopped, never let doubt take over. Sometimes she spoke softly, telling Kale stories of distant planets, of stars and light, of life beyond loss. Other times she was silent, letting her energy do the talking. Slowly, very slowly, Kale's body relaxed and the flicker in his eyes steadied. You're different, he said finally, voice low. I've felt many healers. None like you. You don't just fix the body. You touch something deeper. Lyra felt a small spark of hope. It's because I know what it feels like to be lost, she said gently. I know what it feels like to be broken. That's why I can help you, not because I'm perfect, but because I understand." The bond between them strengthened. Lyra's confidence began to return, not fully but enough to keep going. She realized that healing Cale might not just save him, it could also save her from her own past. But there were obstacles. Cale's mind was guarded, full of memories and grief he refused to release. Sometimes he resisted her touch, pulling away with instinctive strength. Other times he trembled in despair, nearly succumbing to the darkness within him. Each time Lyra had to remind herself to stay calm, to focus, and to trust her skill. At one point, Cale's breathing became erratic. Lyra's hands glowed brighter, and she channeled every ounce of her energy into him. She whispered, "You're not alone. You are not your grief. You are more than your pain. Live, Cale, choose life." For a long moment, nothing happened. Then slowly, his breathing steadied, his body relaxed, and the darkness in his eyes softened. The energy around him shifted. No longer chaotic and jagged, but smoother, warmer. Lyra exhaled, exhausted but relieved. She had stabilized him. Cale looked at her, the first genuine expression of gratitude and recognition crossing his face. You saved me," he said quietly. Lyra shook her head. "Not just me," she said softly. "You're saving me too. Every time I help someone, every time I face what I've been through, I heal a little myself." For the first time in years, she felt whole. She still carried her scars, still remembered her failures, but for the first time she believed that being broken didn't mean she was powerless. She could still make a difference, even in the darkest places. Cale remained silent for a while, studying her. Lyra sensed he was still guarded, still unsure if he could trust his own heart again. But there was a shift, a small thread of connection, fragile but undeniable, binding them together. As the station's lights dimmed for the night, Lyra sat beside him, keeping her hands close but not touching. She let him rest, knowing that tomorrow would be another challenge, another step toward full healing. She had stabilized the Alpha, yes, but his soul was not fully resurrected yet. That journey would take time, courage, and trust. The next morning, the Andromeda outpost glimmered faintly under distant starlight. Lyra stood beside Cale's resting form, watching him carefully. Though he had stabilized overnight, she could feel the remnants of grief lingering around him. His body was strong again, but his soul, that was another matter. "Kyle," she said gently, "today we start the journey to fully heal you. There's a place called the Nexus of Light. It can help your soul regain its strength." Kyle opened his amber eyes slowly. For a moment he said nothing, just observing her with quiet intensity. Then he nodded, a faint trace of his old authority shining through. "Lead the way," he said, his voice low but steady. Lyra felt a flicker of hope. Together they prepared his ship, a sleek vessel designed for speed and endurance. As they lifted off from the station, Lyra studied the star-filled void outside. Danger lurked in every sector, but she had faith in her abilities, and now in Cale's will to survive. The journey to the Nexus was not easy. They passed through asteroid fields, narrowly avoiding collisions, and evaded pirates who roamed the uncharted regions. Each challenge tested Cale's resolve. At first he remained silent, watching Lyra work, trusting her skill but not yet trusting himself. One night, as they drifted through the blackness between stars, Cale finally spoke. "I feel empty," he admitted, his voice barely audible over the hum of the engines. "I survived, but my people, my clan, they didn't. I don't know who I am anymore." Lyra reached out, placing a hand on his arm. The gesture was simple, but the warmth carried more than comfort. It carried understanding. "You are not your loss," she said softly. "You are more than what you survived. You are Cale, the Alpha, a leader, a protector, and you are capable of feeling joy again." Kyle looked at her, searching her face for a hint of doubt, but found none. "And you?" he asked suddenly. "Do you ever feel broken?" Lyra hesitated. Memories of her past failures surfaced, but she forced herself to stay strong. "I do," she admitted. "But I have learned that being broken doesn't mean powerless. Sometimes it means we understand others better. That understanding, that is strength." Her words seemed to reach him. For the first time, Cale allowed himself to feel something beyond grief, a spark of trust, a flicker of hope. The days passed, and with each passing moment, Cale's strength grew, not just physically but emotionally. Lyra continued her subtle guidance, combining her healing energy with gentle conversation. helping him confront the memories he had buried. Sometimes he resisted, withdrawing into silence, but Lyra never forced him. Instead, she remained present, steady, patient. One afternoon, the ship's sensors detected a storm of cosmic energy, a swirling rift in space that could tear the vessel apart. Cale took the helm immediately, but his hands trembled. Lyra stepped beside him, placing her hands lightly on his shoulders. "Focus," she said calmly. "You can do this. Trust yourself. Trust your instincts." Cale's amber eyes met hers, and he drew a deep breath. Slowly his trembling ceased. He guided the ship through the storm, navigating with precision and courage. When they emerged on the other side, Lyra allowed herself a small smile. Cale was learning not just to survive, but to reclaim himself. Finally, after days of travel, they arrived at the Nexus of Light, a colossal station floating in a field of crystalline energy. Its walls shimmered with a soft glow, and the air hummed with the power of countless healers who had come before. Lyra felt a thrill of anticipation. This was where Cale's soul could finally be made whole. The Nexus required a unique ritual. Lyra would channel her energy through the station's conduits, amplifying her abilities, while Cale focused inward, confronting his grief and accepting his losses. It was risky. One misstep could overload their energy, or worse, cause Lyra to lose herself in Cale's pain. "You're ready," Lyra said softly, placing her hands on Cale's chest. "I will guide you. You just have to choose life." Cale nodded, closing his eyes. He drew in a slow, steady breath, letting Lyra's energy flow into him. The room filled with a radiant light, pulsing in time with their combined heartbeats. Lyra could feel every fragment of Cale's grief, every shadow of doubt, but she didn't waver. She focused on hope, on strength, on renewal. Moments felt like hours as the ritual continued. Cale's body shivered, his mind struggling against memories of loss. Lyra whispered encouragements, grounding him, helping him face the darkness instead of fleeing from it. Slowly the tension began to ease. His aura, once fractured and chaotic, began to glow steadily, warm and vibrant. "You're doing it," Lyra said softly, a smile tugging at her lips. "You're letting yourself live again." Cale's eyes opened, golden and bright. He took a deep breath, feeling energy flow through him like never before. The sorrow was still there, but it no longer controlled him. He could honor his fallen clan without being consumed by grief. He could move forward. When the light dimmed, Cale opened his eyes fully and looked at Lyra. Gratitude, respect, and something more flickered in his gaze. I feel alive," he said, voice steady and strong. "Not just in body, but in soul. You've brought me back." Lyra shook her head gently. "We brought each other back," she said. "You trusted me and I trusted myself. That's what made this possible." Kyle stood, feeling the weight of his past lift slightly. For the first time, he smiled without hesitation, a rare, genuine expression that reached his eyes. "I owe you everything," he said quietly. Lyra stepped back, shaking her head. "No, you owe yourself. You allowed yourself to heal. That is your strength." A silence fell between them, comfortable and full of understanding. The bond they had formed was no longer fragile. It was steadfast, built on shared trust and courage. As they prepared to leave the Nexus, Cale turned to Lyra. "I want you to travel with me," he said firmly. "Not just as a healer, but as a partner. Together we can protect others and ensure that no one suffers like I did." Lyra felt her heart swell. The journey that had begun as a test of courage had become something far greater. She was no longer broken. She had learned that healing others could heal herself, and that even the deepest grief could be transformed with trust, patience, and care. "I will," she said, smiling. Together, then, their ships lifted from the Nexus, gliding into the starlit expanse. Ahead lay countless worlds, dangers, and adventures. But for the first time, both Lyra and Cale faced them with hope and strength. They had survived the darkness, and together, they had resurrected not only Cale's soul but also the courage and purpose in their own hearts. As the stars stretched endlessly around them, Lyra reached out to Cale. Their hands met, not as healer and patient, but as equals united by experience, trust, and a bond that could not be broken. And for the first time in a long time, both felt truly alive.